Okay, so we're going to be looking at some SAT practice questions. Number one, this is module one, by the way. The line graph shows the percent of cars for sale at a used car lot on a given day by year model year. For what model year is the percent of cars the sale the smallest? So we see that model year is the X values, and percent of cars for sale is the Y value. So you want to look for where the percent of cars for sale is the smallest. So you want to look for the least Y value. And here you can clearly see that right here, this point right here, 2014 is the least percent of cars for sale which at 4%. So the answer is C, 2014. Okay. The graph of a system of linear equations is shown. What is the solution x, y to the system? So there's two lines here, one line going this way and one line going this way. And you can see they're asking for what is the solution. So when they ask for a solution of two lines, they're asking for where do they intersect. So you can clearly see here, this is the point where they intersect. And if we see, we don't know exactly where, but if we look at the graph, it's about the 4 mark, -5 mark. So it would be at 4, -5. If we look down here, 4, -5. Correct answer is A. Alright, number 3. The total cost in dollars to rent a surfboard consists of a $25 service fee and a $10 per hour rental fee. A person rents a surfboard for T hours and intends to spend a maximum of $75 to rent the surfboard. Which inequality best represents this situation? So, it says the total cost in dollars to rent a surfboard, it takes a $25 service fee and a $10 per hour. So $25 is just a one-time service fee, right? So it would not be reoccurring, right? And it says T is for hours. And now it says $10 per hour right here. And if you if you rent the car for T amount of hours, it would be 10T, right? So we're looking for something that has these two components in the equation. So let's look here. This equation has it, and that's about it. But let's get this last part. Intends to spend a maximum of $75 to rent the surfboard. Maximum means, oh, I don't want to spend more than $75, right? So this total amount of money that I need to use needs to be less than or equal to $75 because I want $75 to be my maximum. Ideally, I want to spend less. So less than is the correct sign. Some common terms for these kinds of questions would be maximum, which is less than, minimum, which is more than, obviously greater than, less than, right? And yeah, these kinds of questions you want to make sure you get the symbol right. And yeah, so the correct answer is D. The graph shown will be translated 4 units up. Which of the following will be the resulting graph? So we have 4 options here, right? And if we take a look back at this graph, the graph is going to be translated up 4 units. Now, what does that mean? Translated up means it's just going to go up, right? It's just going to, think of this equation, this graph, it's just going to shift up 4 units, all right? So if it was to shift up, the vertex right here, this point, would go up 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be at 2, and the graph will kind of look like this, right? This would be the new graph. So we're looking for one that has a vertex at 2, right? And if we can see here, the only answer choice that has a vertex at 2, y equals 2, is choice A. So the correct answer is A. All right, number 5. The equation gives the speed s in miles per hour of a certain car t seconds after it began to accelerate. What is the speed in miles per hour of the car 5 seconds after it began to accelerate? So they're asking for the speed, right, which is s. So we're solving for s in this equation, right? What is s? But we have another variable here, right? How do we eliminate this variable? the problem says of a car 5 seconds after it began, right, to accelerate, and it says t is t seconds after it began to accelerate. So we know t is 5 seconds. So you want to plug this 5 as t. So s would equal 40 plus 3 times 5 seconds, which would be 40 plus 15, which would equal 55. D is your correct answer. All right, number 6. This is our first short response answer, not a multiple choice. And it says the function f is defined by f of x is equal to x squared plus x plus 71. What is the value of f of 2? So in these kinds of questions, when they're asking you what is the value of f of 2, they want you to plug in this 2 in replace of this x value. So basically, you would replace all these x's with 2's, right? So we would get f of 2 equals 2 squared plus 2 plus 71. What is that? 4 plus 2 plus 71, which is equal to 6 plus 71, 77. Number 7. An event planner is planning a party. It costs the event planner a one-time fee of $35 to rent the venue and $10.25 per attendee. The event planner has a budget of $300. What is the greatest number of attendees possible without exceeding the budget? So this question is similar to the question before. I don't remember which question, but it is similar. It was the car one. Where it has a one-time fee, which was like the service fee before. So it has a one-time fee of $35. That's one time. You pay $35. Never worry about it. And it says $10.25 per attendee. So for each attendee, you need to pay an extra $10.25. So let's say X is each attendee, right? Then that would mean you would have to do $10.25 times X for each attendee, right? And you would need to add these two together to get the total cost. So the total added together would be $10.25 plus X plus 35. And it says the event planner has a budget of $300. Now, what does this mean? A budget is you don't want to spend more than $30 for the party, right? So you would have to do less than or equal to. This is like the same thing as saying has a maximum, right? What is the greatest number of attendees possible without exceeding the budget? So it literally says here exceeding the budget. So it doesn't want to exceed the budget. So the maximum, the sign would be less than or equal to, and it would be 300. So they want you to solve this equation, and they want you to solve for x, since we have the equation set up. How do we solve for x? Because they want to know what the greatest number of attendees possible is. How do we solve for x? First, we have to move 35 from both sides, right? Remember, when there's an equation, if you want to do something to one side, you always got to do it to the other side. So now if we subtract it, we get 1025x is less than or equal to 265. Now, how do we solve for x? Yeah, we have to divide by 1025 on both sides. Doing this will cancel out the 1025 on the left side, leaving x on its own. And dividing 265 by 1025 gets you x is less than or equal to 25.9 students. Now it says what is the greatest number of attendees possible? And you can't get a decimal number of attendees, so this you would just round down to 25. So the correct answer is 25 attendees. Number 8. The table gives the distribution of votes for a new school mascot and a grade level for 80 students. If one of these students is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a student whose vote for new mascot was for a lion? Okay, so they want to know, out of all these students, right, what is the probability of selecting a student that voted for a lion? So it says out of all these students, right? So we know that there are 80 total students, right? And how many of them voted for lion? We can see in lion row right here. See that in the total section, a total of 20 students voted for lion. So the correct probability would be 20 out of 80. If you simplify that, you would get 1/4. C is your correct answer. Triangles A, B, C, and D, E, F are congruent, where A corresponds to D and B and E are right angles. The measure of A is 18 degrees. What is the measure of angle F? So this was a very confusing question. It has a lot of words and descriptions. What better way can we understand the question by besides drawing a diagram, right? So we have two triangles, ABC and DEF, and they're congruent, meaning the side lengths are the same and the angle lengths are the same, right? So if you want to draw this, let's draw maybe like this. It's not perfect, but we know that B and E are right angles. So we know that these two are E and B, right? And let's call this A. Let's call this C. So we have triangle A, B, C. And when they say A, B, C, and D, E, F are congruent, that means angle A corresponds to D, B corresponds to E, and C corresponds to F, as stated here. Let's just label this. That means if A is here, then that means D would be here. And since C is here, F would be here. And they say that angle A is 18 degrees. Now, what does that mean? That means, since the triangles are congruent, that means angle D is also 18 degrees. Why is that? Because these angles correspond to one another. So now, we're looking to solve for F, right? And how do we get F? In order to get F, you must add these two angles together and subtract that from 180. 180 degrees is the total amount of degrees in any triangle. So we know E is a right angle, which is 90 degrees. So 90 plus 18 is 108. And 180 minus 108 gives us 72 degrees. So the correct answer is B. Number 10. If 4x plus 2 equals 12, what is the value of 16x plus 8? So now there's two ways of doing this. The first method I'm going to show you is by just solving for x. First, what do we have to do to this equation? We have to remove 2 from both sides. So if we subtract 2 on both sides, we would get 4x equals 10. And to solve for x, all we got to do is divide by 4 on both sides, and we get x equals 2.5. Right? We could also write this as a fraction, which is 5/2. So since we know that x is 5/2, we can do 16, plug this into this expression. 16 5 over 2 plus 8. And how do we solve this? We can multiply 16 and 5 over 2 together. And when we do that quickly is by actually dividing 16 by 2. And you would get 8. So now 8 times 5 is equal to 40. And you add that to 8. The correct answer is B, 48. But there is a quicker method in doing this. We know that 4x plus 2 equal to 12 is equal to 12, right? But let's say we multiply this whole expression, this whole left side, by 4. And we do that to the right side, obviously. If we do that, we would get 4 times 4x, which is 16x, plus 4 times 2, which is 8, so plus 8, equals 48. And they're asking what is 16x plus 8. Conveniently, we have 16x plus 8. That means the correct answer is 48. And for this type of question, when it asks for the value of another expression when they give you this, usually there is this type of pattern where you don't have to solve for x and then plug it into this expression, because it does save time and the SAT loves to do that. Number 11. Which expression is equivalent to m to the power 4 times q to the power 4 times z to the negative first power times m times q to the power 5 times z to the power of 3, where m, q, and z are positive? So in order to do this, we need to understand exponential properties. And how do you do that? You need to know that when exponents with the same base, for example, 2 to the third power times 2 to the fifth power. So they have the same base, which is 2, right? But they have different exponents. How do you solve this instead of just computing these, right? 8 times 32. A better way to solve this is actually by just adding these two exponents together. That's just a property, exponential property. And you would get 2 to the power of 8. And why is that? Because if you do 2 to the power of 3, which is 2 times 2 times 2, times, because there's a multiplication symbol here, times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, you could just get a simpler exponential number, which is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2 to the power of 8, which is just adding the two exponents before together. So you need to understand that in order to solve this question quickly. Okay. So which expression is equivalent to this? Okay, so now we know that m and m to the power 4 and m have the same base. Q to the power 4 and q to the power 5 have the same base. And z to the power of -1 and z to the power of 3 have the same base. So what can we do? We can do m to the power 4 plus m to the power of 1. Make sure not to forget that m isn't, the exponent isn't 0. It's actually 1, right? Because m to the, anything to the power of 0 would be 1. Okay, so m to the 4th times m to the 1st is equal to m to the 5th. You want to multiply this by q to the power 4 times q to the power 5, which is just simple addition. And you want to do z to the power of -1 times z to the power of 3. Now you might get a little confused because there's a negative number here. Don't worry, you can just add these two together and you would just get z to the power of 2. So now you want to look for an answer that has all of these in it. And if we look here, we can see that B has all three of them in it. Therefore, B is the correct answer. All right. An airplane descends from an altitude of 9,500 feet to 5,000 feet at a constant rate of 400 feet per minute. What type of function best represents the relationship between the descending airplane's altitude and time? So it says it's decreasing at a constant rate of 400 feet per minute. That means this airplane isn't going like this and landing. It's not going like this and landing, not going like this and landing. It is actually just decreasing from 9,500 feet slowly at a constant rate to 5,000. What does this line remind you of? It reminds you of a linear line. And yeah, that's correct. This is actually a decreasing linear function. And it shows that B is the correct answer. Let's just take a look at the other answer choices. We know that C and D are immediately wrong because it's descending, right? And that does not mean it is increasing in altitude. And we know if it's exponentially decreasing, it would not look like a linear line because it would not be a constant rate of 400 feet per minute. So we know that B is the correct answer. Number 13. The solution to the given system of equations is xy. What is the value of y? Okay, so this is a system of equations. So now how do we solve for the value of y? There are two main ways to solve for a system of equations. The first way is substitution, and the second way is elimination. Substitution is when you isolate a variable to one side. So if this was an equation, you would say isolate x to be x equals blank. That way, you can plug in that x value and put it into the second equation in order to solve for the y value. The second way is elimination, where you either add or subtract from these two equations to eliminate a variable. Looking at these two equations, what would be the easier option for solving for the value of y? Yeah, so the easier option between the two would obviously be eliminating. Reason being, you can clearly see there's 3x in both sides, in both equations, and you can see that if you just subtract from both equations, you can actually eliminate this 3x from the equations. So we're going to do that. Let's subtract 3x plus 6 from 3x plus 4 from 3x plus 6. If we subtract those two, these two would cancel out, and 6 minus 4 is very easy. It would be 2. Equals, equal sign obviously stays the same, and it would be 4y minus 2y. And what is 4y minus 2y? It is just 2y. And they're asking for the value of y, so divide by 2 on both sides, and you get y equals 1. That is your answer. Okay. The function f is defined by f of x equals x minus 6 times x minus 2 times x plus 6. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x is the result of translating the graph of y equals f of x up 4 units. What is the value of g of 0? Okay, so we discussed this before about translating the graph, right? Translating the graph just means moving the graph, right? And it says up 4 units. That means the graph is just moving up 4 units, right? So how do we do this? G of x is the result of f of x if it was moved up 4 units, right? So what would that mean? that would mean that f of x, oh, sorry, g of x, let me zoom in here. G of x would equal to f of x. It says up 4 units, so it would be plus 4, right? And it says that f of x is this expression, x minus 6 times x minus 2 times x plus 6. So we can just substitute that with f of x, right? That would mean g of x is equal to x minus 6 times x minus 2 times x plus 6. And at the very end here, we would put, sorry, just move this to the side. Plus 4. Now they're asking for what is g of 0. Now we discussed before, if it asked for g of something, you would just substitute the x with the whatever value is in here. So they're asking for 0. So we substitute 0, and it would be 0 minus 6. So what is 0 minus 6? That would be negative 6 times 0 minus 2, which is negative 2, times 0 plus 6, which is 6, plus 4, right? There's no x value here. So now what is negative 6 times negative 2 times 6? That is 72 plus 4. What is this? 76. So the correct answer is 76. Okay. Zoom out here. Let's actually get rid of all of this. All right. The function f of w equals 6w squared gives the area of a rectangle in square feet. If its width is w feet and its length is 6 times its width, which of the following is the best interpretation of f of 14 equals 1176? So let's draw a diagram for this one. It says gives the area of a rectangle, so we know the shape is a rectangle, right? We're not going to draw this to scale, but hopefully we can try our best. So we have a rectangle here, and it says its width is w feet, so the width is w, and its length is 6 times its width. So what can we do? The length is just 6w, right? Which of the following is the best interpretation of f of 14? So we know that 14 is substituting for w, and what is w? W is the width, right? So the width of the rectangle, we know, is 14. So we can actually replace this 14. And now it says it equals 1176. And it says the function gives the area of the rectangle. So that the result of this function, 6w squared, right, which is length times width, is the area of the rectangle. And we know right here, the area is 1176. If we look at the choices here, it says the correct answer would probably be, it would definitely be this one, A. Reason being, let's just go over all the answers. So B, if the width of the rectangle is 14 feet, then the length of the rectangle is 1,176. So yeah, that's just incorrect, because if the width is actually 14 feet and the length of the rectangle is 6 times the width, right? 6 times 14 is actually 84. So it is not 1,176. So B is incorrect. If the width of the rectangle is 1,176, the length of the rectangle is 14. Yeah, that's just incorrect. If the width of the rectangle is 1,176 feet, then the area of the rectangle is 14 feet squared. That's incorrect, because we know the width is 14. So the correct answer is A. All right. The number of bacteria in a liquid medium doubles every day. There are 44,000 bacteria in the liquid medium at the start of an observation. Which of the following best represents the number of bacteria Y in the liquid medium T days after starting of the observation? So we can use the exponential equation, the form y equals A times B to the T power, where A is the number of bacteria at the start of the observation, right? So that's the principal value. B, and the number of bacteria increases by a factor of B every day. So this is the factor. So let's it could be increase or decrease, by the way. And in this problem, it says the number of bacteria doubles every day. So every day would double. So what number would classify as doubling? 2, right? So B is equal to 2. And there are 44,000 bacteria in the liquid at the start of an observation. So we know that A is 44,000, right? So we can rewrite this equation. Y equals 44,000 times 2T. Now, if we look at the choices, we can see that choice D matches with our equation. So that is the correct answer. Number 17. The table shows the exponential relationship between the number of years X since Hannah started training in pole vault and the estimated height H of X in meters of her best pole vault for that year. Which of the following functions best represents this relationship where X is less than or equal to 4? Okay. So we can see here that at X equals 0, so at the very start, because it says between number of years X since Hannah started training, right? So X equals 0 is when she started. Her best pole vault for that year was 1.23, right? So if we look at the choices, we know that 1.23 is the principal value, right? It's the start. So we know that A and B are wrong because 1.12 is not the principal value. It's actually 1.23. And which of the following functions best represents where X is less than 4? Okay, so they want to know what function, right? So this function right here is actually an exponential decay, where after each year passes, her pole vault actually decreases, her best pole vault. So after year 1, which is X equals 1, that means her pole vault will go from 1.23 to 0.1476. That is just incorrect, right? Because the graph here clearly shows an increase in her abilities to pole vault, right? So we know C is wrong. So now we know D is the answer. But why? We want to understand why D is the answer. So if we look here at the graph, let's say for year number 2, we want the result to be 1.54. So let's plug in X as 2 because it's year 2. So let's do 2. 1.23 times 1.12 to the second power. That would equal about 1.54, right? It would be 2912, but we can round that to 1.54, and it shows that right here. Therefore, D is the correct answer. Number 18. The function h is defined by h of x equals f of 4x plus 28. The graph of y equals h of x in the xy plane has an x-intercept at a, 0 and a y-intercept at 0, b, where a and b are constants. What is the value of a plus b? So, they're giving us 2 points that are on the line, right? So let's just draw a graph here. This is the y, and this is the x, right? Let's just say, okay, so divided by 4x plus, okay. We're going to actually draw the graph like this. Let's see. This. Yeah, so it has a 4x, so y equals mx plus b. It's written in this format. We know that 4 is the slope because it's m, and 28 is the y-intercept. So let's say this is about 28. We know right here that is the y-intercept. That is a point right here. And this point is also 0, b, because the y-intercept is at 0, b. And if it's about 4, if the slope is about 4, it's increasing, right? So let's just write like this. Let's say this is our line here, and obviously it goes farther, but let's just say right here, right? This point right here is a, 0, right? So now, how do we find a and b, right? B is actually given to us. The y-intercept is actually given in the equation, right? So we know b is 28. Now, how do we find the a value, right? In order to find the a value, we can simply just plug this into the equation, right? So I'm just going to move all this. Let's actually get rid of this. Move all this to this side. Okay. So now, how do we solve for a? We just plug it into h of x. So h of x equals y, so the y value is 0, right? 0 equals 4x, but since x value is actually a, we'll just put a plus 28. Now how do we solve for this? We move 28 to the other side by subtracting 28 on both sides. So we get negative 28 equals 4a. And by dividing by 4 on both sides, we get a equals to negative 7, right? So now we get a is equal to negative 7 and b is equal to 28. What can we do with that? We can do, they're asking for what is the value of a plus b, right? So a plus b is equal to negative 7 plus 28, which is equal to 21. So the correct answer is A, 21. We gotta zoom out for this question. Number 19. Y is less than 5x plus 6. For which of the following tables are all the values of x and their corresponding values of y solutions to the given inequality? Right? So we can see in these tables that the x values remain the same throughout all the choices, right? 3, 5, and 7. So let's actually just plug in 3, 5, and 7 to the inequality right here. So y is less than 5 times 3 plus 6. And 5 times 3 is 15 plus 6. Y is less than 21. That means the y value is 21. And if we look here, there's only one choice that has y value as 21. These are all incorrect. So the correct answer is D. Let's just make sure by plugging in 5 and 7, right? So y is less than 5 times 5 plus 6, which is 25 plus 6, which is 31. That checks out. And for the last one, x equals 7. Y is less than 5 times 7 plus 6. 35 plus 6 is 41. So that checks out. Therefore, D is the correct answer. Pretty easy. The solution to the given system of equations is xy. What is the value of x minus y? So now, this is a very simple system of equations, like we did before, right? Instead of solving using elimination, this question is actually easier by doing substitution. Reason being, y is already given to you. So they already have y solved for in terms of x. So all we have to do is substitute y in this equation as 4x plus 1. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do 4x plus 1 equals 15x minus 8. So now, if we multiply through distribution, we get 16x plus 4 equals 15x minus 8. So we get, let's move minus 15x on both sides, minus 15x. And let's do minus 4 on both sides too. So we get rid of this, and we're left with x equals negative 8 minus 4, which is negative 12. So x is negative 12. Now, in order to solve for y, all we have to do is plug this x, right? Plug this x into the y. So we would just do, let's see, y equals 4 times negative 12 plus 1. That would be negative 48 plus 1, which is y equals negative 47. They're asking for x minus y, which is just negative 12 minus negative 47, which would equal to negative 12 plus 47, because the negatives, two negatives, make a positive. And that would equal to 35, I believe. Oh, sorry. It is actually not 48 here. Is negative 12 plus 47. Yep. That would equal 35. So your correct answer is 35. Number 21. A right triangle has legs with lengths of 24 centimeters and 21 centimeters. If the length of this triangle's hypotenuse in centimeters can be written in the form of 3 root d, where d is an integer, what is the value of d? So a right triangle, let's just draw this diagram. It's easier for us to understand if we drew a diagram. Right triangle has legs. What are the legs in a right triangle, right? So the hypotenuse is always the side that is opposite of the right angle, right? So this is the hypotenuse. Just label as hyp, right? So the legs are actually these two sides. And they're just kind of seen as legs because they're like legs for the hypotenuse. And so the other two sides are the legs. And they said they have lengths 20. Let me just move this. Yep. Okay. So they said sorry about that. They said the legs are length 21 and 24, right? Doesn't matter which side. And the hypotenuse is written in the form 3 root d, where d is an integer. They want to know what the value of d is. Now, how do we create an equation that solves for d? We can simply just use the Pythagorean theorem, right? The Pythagorean theorem states that a squared plus b squared is c squared. And a squared and b squared, a and b are the legs of the triangle, and c is the hypotenuse. Right, so we can do 21 squared plus 24 squared equals 3d squared. Now what can we do? 21 squared is equal to 401, I believe, right? 441, sorry. 441 plus 24 squared, which is 576. That would equal to 1076. No, sorry. 1017. And 3 root d squared is just 3 squared times square root of d squared. And square root of anything squared would just cancel out the square root and cancel out the square. So it would be equal to 9d. So d, we just divide 9 on both sides, and we get d is equal to 113. 113 is the correct answer. The floor of a ballroom has an area of 600 square meters. An architect creates a scale model of the floor of the ballroom, where the length of each side of the model is 1/10 times the length of the corresponding side of the actual floor of the ballroom. What is the area in square meters of the scale model? So, let's see. The area of the ballroom, right? So we can create another diagram for this. Let's zoom out here for a second. Right. It's 600. So we know it's 600 square meters, right? And let's write this 600 square meters. It's given that the length of each side of a scale model is 1/10 times the length. So let's say this is L times width. That'd be 1/10, 1/10. So because each side is 1/10, right? The scale model is 1/10 of each side. That means, oh, by the way, this 600 square meters is equal to length times width. That means that the new area of this scale model would be 1/10. Sorry. It would be 1/10 W times 1/10 length, right? And 1/10 W times 1/10 length is equal to 1/100 width times length. And we know width times length right here is 600 meters squared. So we can just plug that in and say 1/100 times 600 square meters is equal to just 600 divided by 100, which is 6 square meters. So the correct answer is A. Number 23. Which of the following equations best represents a circle with index coordinate planes that intersects the y-axis at exactly one point? So, how do we solve this question, right? So let's take a look at each of the choices, right? Let's look at choice A. So in order to know what the equation of a circle is, it's actually these points right here gives us the center. And now it's not just -8 comma -8, right? it's actually positive 8 comma positive 8. Reason being, it just takes the opposite, right? Because the equation of a circle is actually x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals, sorry, squared equals r squared. Because there's a subtraction sign here, right? The center, because h and k are the center, it will actually be the opposite sign of what it gives you. So because it's negative 8 and negative 8, the center of this equation is positive 8, positive 8, right? Let's just create a makeshift graph here. If the center is, let's see, this is 8, this is 8. So positive, this is the center. The radius of this equation is 4. Reason being, 16 is the radius squared. Therefore, the square root of 16 is equal to the radius. That means the radius of this is 4. And actually, the radius of all the circles here are 4. So we know the distance between here is 8, right? But since the radius is 4, the circle would only be drawn, it would only be drawn halfway to the y-axis, right? So let's just move this whole thing down. Sorry, it's lagging a little. Let's just keep it here. Okay. So the circle would only look lagging a little. Okay. So the circle would only look like this. It would only go halfway. That does not touch the y axis at all, right? They want to ask for 1 point, 1 point. So let's take a look at the next one. The next one has center at 8, comma 4, right? So that would mean it's right here, again at 8, but it would be like 4 right here. So the center would be here. The radius is again 4, and this length is 8, and you want to touch the y-axis exactly once, and it will not touch it. Therefore, that is the incorrect answer. It doesn't touch it at all. Let's take a look at D. The center here is actually 0, comma 9. 0 because it's just x squared. It's not, it's not x minus something, right? So the center is actually x squared. It's the center is 0, comma negative 9. So it would be 0, comma negative 9 right here. Negative 9. Sorry, not negative 9. It's 9. The circle would kind of look like, let me draw it in a different color. It would look like, the radius is 4 again. So it would come down to 5. It would look like this. And if we drew the y-axis all the way up, it actually touches the y-axis twice. Once here and once here. Therefore, it is not the correct answer. That leaves us with C, right? And C shows us that the center is 4, comma 9. So it's right here like 4, comma 9. So it's up here. So the circle, again, I'm going to draw it in a different color. It has a radius of 4, and this length is 4. So we would go here, touch down to 5. And this actually only touches the y-axis once. Therefore, C is the correct answer. Number 24. In triangles A, B, and C, and D, E, F, angles B and E each have measures 27 degrees, and angles C and F have measure 41 degrees. Which additional piece of information is sufficient to determine whether triangle ABC is congruent to DEF? So, this is geometry. And here, we need to actually draw these diagrams. So let's draw ABC and DEF, where BC is around 27 degrees. So let's draw 27 degrees like this. It's like 41 degrees. It's like this. It's just an not really an accurate drawing, but let's just go along with it. Okay, so B and E, 27. 27. And okay. F and C are 41 degrees. So 41. Right. And what additional piece would determine whether ABC is congruent to DEF? And what do you need to make it congruent? So let's go over choice letter A. The measure of angle A. So if we know the measure of angle A, right, we know that D is congruent to D's same angle as A, so they have the same angle. So it would be an A congruent proof. And that is actually invalid. This does not work to prove that triangles are congruent. They do work that to prove that triangles are similar, but they do not prove that they are congruent, because triangles could have the same angle measure, but they could have different side lengths, right? Getting the length of side AB, right, would tell you what this length is. Say it's 10, right? However, we do not know what the length of DE is. We can't actually assume that they're the same, because it doesn't say that they are equal, right? It doesn't say DE is, also 10, right? So that is incorrect. C, okay, let's go over D first. D, no additional information is necessary. That is incorrect, because having two angles that are congruent together does not actually prove that they are similar. I mean, congruent. It only proves that they are similar, so this is incorrect. Same thing. This is the same as A. And so the answer is C, because the lengths of side BC and EF, if they say that BC is 10, and if they say that EF is 10, then that means that they are congruent, because they give you both sides, both lengths for the corresponding sides. Therefore, C is the correct answer. Number 25. The result of increasing the quantity by 1800% is 684. What is the value of X? Increasing the quantity X by 1800, right? Okay. So if you want to increase the quantity X by 1800 to make it 684, what can you do, right? Increasing X by 0% would keep it at X, right? So increasing 100% would mean it would be 2X, right? 200% is 3X. 300% is 4X. And you can see a pattern how if it's 200%, it would actually be 3X instead of 2X, right? So 300% is 4X. So 1800% is actually 19X, right? 19 times X. This would equal 684. Now, 684 divided by 19 is actually 36. So the correct answer is 36. A window repair specialist charges $220 for the first 2 hours of repair, plus an hourly fee for each additional hour. The cost for 5 hours of repair is $400. Which function f gives the total cost in dollars for hours of repair where x is greater than or equal to 2? So, it says it charges $220 for the first 2 hours of repair, right? Plus an hourly fee for each additional hour. And that means $220 is a one-time fee, right? And it might seem like it's reoccurring because it says for the first 2 hours, but it's actually just a one-time fee. We just have to keep in mind that for the first 2 hours, you're not paying this hourly fee, this new hourly fee, because it says for each additional hour. So if X is the number of hours, right, you have to be aware to subtract 2 from X, right? From 2 from X. And it says the total cost for 5 hours of repair is $400, right? So we want to solve for, because we don't actually know the hourly fee, so we want to solve for the hourly fee. So the total cost for 5 hours is $400. So now, let's create an equation. So it'd be 5 hours. 5 is equal to X, right? 5 minus 2, right? X would additional hour fee is, so 3 hours additional. So you would do 3 times some number. We don't know which number, but the fee in order to right, suffice for the fee, plus 220. So we want to subtract 400 from 220, right? And you would get 180. So let's actually create an equation for this. Equals 400. So let's minus 220 on both sides. 220. We get 180 equals, let's just call this y, 3y. That means the hourly fee is y divided by 3 divided by 3. That would get y equals 60. So the hourly fee is 60, right? And don't get confused, right? You can't just look at B and be like, oh, this is the hourly fee, so therefore B is the correct answer. It is not actually B. Let's actually go here now, and we know that f of x, this is actually the equation, is equal to 60, which is the fee, times x minus 2. Reason being, the first 2 hours is $220, right? So we're not actually paying additional fee for the first 2 hours. And then you want to add 220 to the end. Let's just move this on this side, right? Therefore, 60x minus 120 plus 220, because from distribution you can get 120, right? Right here, cancel these, and you would get plus 100, and it'd be 60x plus 100 equals f of x. Therefore, the correct answer is actually A. Okay, that was a pretty long question, but that was a very good question to do. Okay. The last question is, what is the sum of the solutions to the given equation? So it says asking for the sum of the solutions. So now we know that x has multiple solutions, so just keep that in mind, okay? Let's actually distribute all of this out. This is a very complicated looking equation, but we can actually distribute it into a quadratic equation. So let's go. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is just x minus 56 is equal to 4x times x, which is 4x squared, minus 28x, right? Because 4x times negative 7. Now let's move all this to the right side, because I want this x squared value, the coefficient here, to be positive. So let's do minus x squared, which is 3x squared, minus x, which is negative 29 squared, 29x, minus 56 equals 0. Oh, sorry, it's plus 56 because you're actually adding 56 to the side. So it's actually plus 56, and this is your quadratic equation. Now you want to solve for all the solutions, right? However, what we could do to figure out the sum of the solutions is this property that's called the sum of roots. And so the sum of roots is actually equal to the b value, negative b over a, right? The sum of the roots is negative b over a, and the product of the roots is c, positive c over positive a. So knowing this, keeping this in mind, because we know that quadratic equations are written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, right? This is the quadratic form. We know that negative b over a in this specific equation is negative 29, which is just positive 29, right? So we can just write positive 29. Over 3, which is a. Sorry, what just happened? 29 over 3. And this is the answer to the sum of the solutions, right? And you could, in fact, you could just use the quadratic formula to find the factors, but it's a very complicated process in which this problem actually doesn't want you to do that way, because they don't ask for what are the two solutions, right? If they ask for what are the two solutions, you would want to actually solve, right, for the solutions by factoring, but they don't ask that, and they just ask for the sum. So therefore, this is the sum, right? You just got to remember that negative b over a is the sum of the roots, and c over a is the product of the roots. So yeah, that's the whole entirety of Module 1. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And next video, we'll be going over Module 2.